Hello, everyone. Good day. Thank you so much for joining me today. You could be doing anything with your time, but you're here with me. Thank you for joining this discussion, The Power of Teamwork, Managing Generational Differences for a Safer Workplace. So, before we get started and jump into things, I just want to take the opportunity and the time to kind of introduce myself to you and my background and kind of what I'm about. So, my name is Tony Mudd and I am the founder of a company called Sensory Safety, located right here in Louisville, Kentucky, in the United States. And over the last 10 years, I have specialized in helping teams prevent injuries and accidents in the workplace. Specifically, when you're talking about steel and automotive industries, I've been helping those teams prevent those accidents in the workplace. So let's take a look at today's agenda. By working with so many different leadership teams and management teams, I've seen over the last several years the challenge that many managers, including myself, safety professionals, have had leading the new workforce. We have so many generations under one roof currently right now, and it's presenting some challenges, specifically when we're talking about workplace safety. And each generation brings their own unique perspectives, personalities, preferences, and things to get to the common goal and help the business move. And when we're trying to create an injury-free workplace, we have to understand and hear each other and hear each generation and understand how each generation works, leads, communicates, solve problems, all working to get to that one same goal, making sure that the company is safer, better, and profitable, right? So in today's discussion, we'll cover four key component areas. We'll look at the generational dynamics and the myths that surround the workplace that create the perceptions of stereotypes in the workplace for most generations. We'll also understand how generational differences impact the safety attitude and also how the generational differences impact workplace safety training. That's a big one. We'll also look into the role that cross generational mentorship plays in strengthening our safety teams, our safety committee, and just our overall safety culture in the workplace. That is another big one I think a lot of you might be interested in. And the last component we'll be looking into today is understanding how collaboration across leadership teams can impact your overall safety culture. I mean, we're not just seeing generational changes in our floor staff, but we're also seeing it in our leaders as well. We're seeing a lot of different leaders from millennial, Gen Z, Gen X, baby boomers, traditional. So we have all different types of leaders as well. So how can those leaders collaborate and work together and learn from each other to drive to the company's common goal of keeping everyone safe in the workplace and staying profitable, right? So let's go ahead and move forward. Let's talk about the core element, the first element, right? We're going to talk about foundation. Um, and for the first time in history, if you really think about it, we have five distinct generations working side by side, basically coexisting right now. We have our traditionalists, we have our baby boomers, we have our Generation X, we have our Generation Z. This mix creates a unique challenge for leaders like myself and leaders like you as well. So let's take a look at the quick breakdown and the foundation of what makes up each generation, right? So let's take a look at our first generation. We're going to look at traditionalists. Okay, traditionalists were born between 1922 and 1945, and they make up just over 2% of the workforce. And then when we're looking at them, we're going to look at some key elements about them. Some of the things about them is that they value loyalty, dependability. They prefer in-person and handwritten communication. Now, this is going to be a big one, especially when we're talking about workplace health and safety training. Now, we're going to look at the next generation. We have baby boomers. Baby boomers were born between 1946 and 1964, and they make up 25% of today's workforce. They favor face to face interaction, and they are known for their team oriented skills, hard working approach, and staying focused, and basically building success through dedication. They're the generation that believes in working hard to get what you want and putting your time in and paying your dues, before you get where you need to go in terms of your career success. So let's move forward to the next generation. So the next generation we have is Generation X. Okay, this is the generation between 1965 and 1980, and this generation represents 33% of the total workforce right now. And this generation is very unique. Okay, they value flexibility, independence, and work-life balance. They emphasize diversity and they act quickly if their needs aren't met. And I'll explain more about that within the discussion. The next one we have is millennials. Millennials are born between 1981 and 1996, and they make up 35% of the workforce. These millennials are known for being achievement driven, purpose focused work. They look for growth, work life balance, and they thrive on unique experiences that are going to add value and responsibility to them. So our last generation that we have in the workplace is Generation Z. They make up 5% of the workforce. Generation Z is basically entrepreneurial. A lot of them were raised during the pandemic and graduated in the pandemic and when the world has shut down. But a lot of them have that entrepreneurial skill where they're making money online. They're going against the tradition of burger flipping and maybe doing acts and things online and generating income. They're diverse, globally minded. They value individualism, okay, and creativity, and they often prefer flexibility over rigid structures. And this is huge when you're talking about attitudes towards safety and traditional safety, and then also to building health and safety training and conducting health and safety training when you're talking about Generation Z. So recently, I was asked one specifically, what I would call a challenging question. I was asked, why is it so challenging to lead cross generational teams? And I tell people over and over again, it's because people aren't truly connecting in the workplace anymore. And let's think about it. In the workplace, sure, people are talking, but nobody's really listening. I mean, we, when nobody's listening, we create stereotypes of views of each other, which causes us to be disconnected and causes us to be disengaged. And one of the biggest challenges in managing a cross generational team is creating meaningful connections with the team. Think about it this way. Within the world that we live right now, a tech-savvy world where everything's instant, we have phones at our disposal, email at our disposal, chat, emojis. We have all these different types of ways to communicate, but we still struggle to form genuine bonds within the workplace. We still struggle with that disconnect. I mean, if you think about it, people gravitate towards those who have a shared interest. And unintentionally, this could form divisions in the workplace. And if you think about it right now, COVID-19 really changed our perspective. It really changed the way we connect right now in this moment. Because if you think about your current workplace, where you are right now, what team you lead, if you go into any lunchroom, if you go into any lunchroom, see how people are talking, see how people are connecting. Most people don't even connect anymore. Most people just on their phones, or, they're afraid to talk to each other or get to know each other, And the crazy thing about it, ever since COVID-19, we have changed the way we connect. Now we don't need to be physically present to build relationships. I have collaborated with people for years online without ever seeing them in person. But this shift that we're seeing is bringing new challenges for employers like yourself. Imagine this, and I call this the five-way pool. A lot of people call it the tug of war. Imagine the game, a game of tug of war where you have traditionalists pulling for rules and hierarchy. You have baby boomers pulling for teamwork. You have Gen X pulling for values and independence and flexibility. You have millennials who want purpose and innovation. Then you have Gen Z, who is all about creativity and individualism. And that as each team member continues to pull in their own direction, the rope immediately snaps. And when this happens, the snap represents the generational differences that aren't aligned. The miscommunication, the inefficiency, the inefficiency, and even accidents can happen when we're unaligned, when we're not aligned as a company. Because we have too many generational differences and we're not seeing eye to eye. We're not hearing each other. We're not connecting with each other. We're not spending enough time solving problems with each other. That's how these situations happen. And to prevent this, specifically when we're talking about workplace safety depends upon everybody pulling in the same direction. Everybody must be aligned to have a workplace that is free of injuries. Think about it. When leaders start to understand the strengths of each generation and harness those strengths, we can unite, as a company and get and complete our safety goals. Our team can be much stronger. And it's kind of like the tug of war where everybody's collective pool is strengthening our safety, not just reducing it, and we're able to remove any misunderstandings and build some real connected workplace, right? So let's take a dive into, and when we're talking about being unaligned, a lot of times, one of the biggest areas that we're unaligned with is that we have stereotypes that we have created about each generation based upon the things that we have been told by other people. A lot of times it may be just one interaction with one person from that generation, and then it gives you this whole persona of what you think about the whole generation. And that builds a stereotype, which stereotype is just a negative image that paints a picture of a bunch of people that is wrong most times. Okay. And let's take a dive into some of those myths and stereotypes that can really shape and distort our view of each other within the workplace. These assumptions can create some real barriers to communication, teamwork, especially when it comes to safety and collaboration. And the first myth that we're going to talk about, and many times that I hear in the workplace, specifically when I'm doing workplace safety training or I'm trying to develop or bring in a new technology, the first myth that I hear is baby boomers are resistant to adopting to new technology, or baby boomers are not good at using technology. Okay, that is the first myth that I always hear within the workplace. And in reality, many baby boomers are highly skilled with workplace technology. And I'm going to explain the difference between workplace technology and social media technology because we have to understand that we're going to look at it this way. But a lot of baby boomers, from what I realize and what research is showing, is that they're eager to learn new skills and new tools, sometimes outpacing younger generations. When I look at this myth, I think about my 72-year-old mother-in-law. My mother-in-law worked for the United States Army as a budget analyst for about 35 years. And I can tell you, this person, when I look at her, she is considered a Microsoft Excel pro. She uses Microsoft Excel to build spreadsheets like nobody's business. She can build PowerPoint. She can do video conferencing, and she stays active on social media. And many times she can out text me on the phone, and I'm a millennial. Okay, this shows that workers are a lot of times older workers are often more tech savvy than we give them a lot of more times that they are more tech savvy than we assume. And actually, there's a big difference in the types of technology that each generation is skilled with. In terms of my mother-in-law, for instance, she's great with Microsoft Excel. She's great with PowerPoint, Microsoft applications. She's great with using Outlook and Google Sheets and things like that, and even project management software. And on the other hand, she's not focused with social media technology, or which tends to be really, really good with Gen Z. And what I found out is the difference with the workplace technology. Workplace technology is to drive the business, to drive profit, to drive efficiency, to drive quality, to drive safety, right? Those technologies that we have had in place for years Microsoft applications, Outlook, the ways that we connect, right, within the workplace. Those are workplace tools. And a lot of baby boomers are really, really good using those tools. But I think where the confusion comes in is that people say, oh, they're not good at technology because they may not necessarily use social media, right? And who is using social media more than anybody is Gen Z, right? They're using that social media, and that's where a lot of their tech savvy skills come in, you know. And the crazy thing about it, this highlights while that boomers might not be, Snapchat or Instagram pros, they often have a solid grasp on these workplace tools, and they outpace a lot of young generations right now. I mean, if you go and ask your 16-year-old and say, hey, can you build me a spreadsheet that has profit and loss and all these different things, many times they're going to look at you and say, hey, look at you crazy, probably. Okay. But if you ask my mother-in-law, oh my goodness, you're going to have an amazing spreadsheet because she's mastered those skills. She's mastered those skills of workplace technology that we are currently using, not necessarily social media. So, which brings me to my second myth. Gen Z are tech wizards, the know-how generation. Okay. I would have to say that this is a half truth. I would like to say that this is a half truth. And a lot of times we give, a lot of times this is a misconception that Gen Z is naturally tech savvy. But research is starting to show that that's not always true in the workplace. While they grew up with digital devices, many younger professionals struggle with workplace technology, as I was telling you. Those Microsoft applications, those Google applications, those applications that we have been using for years. And a lot of times when they struggle with this, they experience what they call tech shame. Tech shame. And that is a real thing. Okay. In fact, 1 in 5 Generation Z workers feel judged when they are faced with technical issues in the workplace. And on the flip side, when we're talking about older generations, they often show strong proficiency when using workplace tools, and they are eager to learn again with new skills and things like that. Believing the myth that Gen Z workers excel with all technology can lead to unnecessary pressure and challenges in the workplace. It can create those real gaps that we don't want. These myths remind us that stereotypes can cloud our understanding and impact collaboration, right? Let's aim to see past them and foster a culture that values each person's strengths. And that's the key. We have to build on the strength of each generation, pull those strengths together, and be in alignment so we can all get to our common goal of keeping safety at the forefront of all of our minds. So let's move to myth number 3. Myth number 3 is that Generation Z and millennials are lazy and they don't care about work. Oh, wow. How many times have you read this in the tabloids or in the newspaper? And this is another misconception and another stereotype that millennials and Gen Z are lazy or uncommitted, especially with movements like the quiet quitting movement. However, the reality is that both generations prioritize flexibility and work-life balance, not laziness. And I think that is where the confusion happens right there. According to a new 2023 study and a survey, 62% of millennials and 49% of Generation Z say, excuse me, I'm sorry, say that their work is just as important, second behind friends and family. That's how important their work is. And I think also too, when we're talking about millennials in particular, they are known for their strong work ethic. And I think a lot of people really miss and may not understand that millennials are juggling a lot of jobs at one time, having side hustles and side business, and also caring for their parents or family members too. That is another big thing that is being missed. And working long hours and not stopping. Millennials have created something called the hustle culture. And that basically means you're just going nonstop, working, going after your business, and you really are not stopping to give yourself a chance to reboot. And that's not good. Okay. But their work ethic is definitely there. In terms of Gen Z, we all see that Gen Z was shaped by the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. And that pandemic allowed them to adapt into ability of entrepreneurship, starting to use the tools around them. I mean, as I told you before, Gen Z is really, really good with using social media. So what better way to use social media to drive income, to drive business, and they're willing to challenge the traditional norms. And this is really, really big because if you're a leader in the workplace, specifically a safety leader in the workplace, you have to understand with the Generation Z, they're going to challenge the norms of traditional safety. They're going to challenge the norms of traditional safety in the way that we're doing things. And this is a good thing because there may be other opportunities for us to solve problems that we may not even be paying attention to, by continuing to do things the traditional way. So to break down some these stereotypes, let's talk about how to build connections. Okay. Now, to break down the stereotypes, we need to start building meaningful connections and communications within our company. And one of the biggest ways that I talk to a lot of people that you can do this, one of the more practical ways, you don't have to put a program into place or anything. It's by simply observing, asking your team members or just paying attention to see how your team communicates. Do you know right now, currently, what your team's communication preferences are? How does your team communicate? I mean, do they prefer to use text, email, chat, phone? Do they prefer to use Slack? What do they prefer to use and what are they comfortable doing? Are they comfortable with virtual meetings? Are they comfortable with face-to-face meetings? What is their learning style? Do they prefer in-person learning? Do they prefer virtual learning? Do they prefer self-paced formats? Including myself, do they prefer a handshake or just a smile? These are all basic areas that you can do to learn a person's communication, which ultimately build respect over time. And these things are just done by just generally observing people. I think a lot of times when you're in the workplace and you're sending emails, let's say you're sending emails to a person and they're not responding. That person may not necessarily be an email person, or you could be calling them on the phone and leaving voicemail. They may not be a phone person. They may be a more face-to-face person or a more a virtual meeting person, but you don't know if you don't spend time or even simply ask them. And one of the biggest ways that companies can do this is start surveying or using focus groups to gather the preferences of how people like to communicate within the workplace to make sure that people are feeling heard and valued. And also, too, this can help with the efficiency of the workplace in terms of people getting back the responses on time or getting back responses so you can get your questions answered or we can get problem solved, right? So this is another big one that is just like a low-hanging fruit. It's just basically asking people, what is your communication preference? And just kind of paying attention to it and following through on it. So another overlooked factor in building meaningful connections, and when I think about this, is asking yourself, how well does your team work to solve problems? How well does your team work to solve problems? And a lot of times, many teams don't spend enough time to connect, to simply know each other, to actually be able to work together enough to actually solve some really good problems. I was reading an article not too long ago about this Japanese company and how they were hosting informal mixers like pizza parties and coffee parties and things like that. And they're very common. But what they would do is they would hold these mixers right before their meetings. And it wasn't a chance to talk about work. It was a chance to build an atmosphere where people felt relaxed enough to start interacting and engaging with each other outside of the formal setting. Imagine having a coffee chat or a friendly competition where employees get to know each other across different levels. And that's what it's all about. I've even read stories where people have implemented escape room challenges at work, where it's a escape room where there is a chance for teams to have fun. It's an effective way to promote teamwork. And in these activities, employees must solve problems together to boost collaboration and also to boost communication across different age groups. This is really, really big when you're talking about your leaders, when you're talking about your managers, your supervisors, when you're talking about your directors, because these individuals have to work together, but it also gives an opportunity to teach us all how each other thinks. right? Specifically, when we're challenged with certain things in the workplace that may be a little bit more difficult, we want to know who are the right people that we need to have in place to solve this problem, right? And what this also does, it builds a mutual respect and a collaborative spirit within the workplace, and it continues to strengthen that safety awareness, that team unity that we're all looking for, is by doing those team building exercises. So let's move to the next one. And this is the one I think that pretty much everybody is looking into right now, is creating cross mentoring, right? Another big issue often look is how well team members are sharing information across different generations. People aren't talking, people aren't sharing, people aren't engaging with each other, which can lead to major problems, specifically when it comes to improving workplace safety. Because if you think about what workplace safety is all about creating a culture. But how can you create a culture if you don't learn it from someone else? Creating a culture is all about looking at the habits and beings of other people. That's how you do it. And the number one way to create that culture is by creating connection between the workers. And you can't create the culture without connection. So we have to create connection. And one way to do this is to create a cross generational mentorship program, which I'll discuss later in this section. But basically, this program pairs different employees with different level of experience, different levels of perspective, different levels of backgrounds, to be able to not just share information but build relationships with each other. For example, you could take an employee that has a massive amount of experience of know-how. Basically, they know how the job goes, they know why the company does what it does. You can take a boomer, right, a baby boomer, and partner them with a millennial, and that baby boomer is sharing, industry, that they're sharing industry safety advice, and that millennial is coming in and also sharing new perspectives and new insights on the new trends on why the industry is changing or whatnot, and they're basically able to exchange information and build a bond. And that's what we're looking for, to be able to exchange that information and build a bond, because once we build a bond, we can build culture from the bond. So, something else that we also have to look into when we're building connections is when we're looking at these stereotypes and these biases that have developed in the workplace from wherever they came from. One of the big things that we have to do to make sure that we're discouraging these stereotypes is we have to educate on impact. Okay, start with training sessions to educate employees about the negative effects of stereotypes and biases within the workplace, and emphasize the benefits of having a diverse background, having a diverse mindset, and also including different generations and highlighting the perspectives and the creativity of how everybody can work together collaboratively, right? Another thing that we have to do is that we have to challenge assumptions. We have to encourage employees to question assumptions about other generations by sharing examples of common stereotypes. We have to make sure that we are tailoring the programs to focus on empathy and communication, to make sure that we're bridging the gap, and improving understanding around different stereotypes that may be trying to generate within your workplace. And then the last one is that we have to make sure that we're deploying key skills and offering key education for our workforce in regarding communication, conflict management, and collaboration and teamwork across different generations. Not just teamwork within your team, but teamwork collaboratively with across all generations, to make sure that we're building a respectful and more inclusive environment for everybody in terms of safety. So let's talk about some differences. So in our last couple of slides, we talked about the foundation. We talked about what each generation, elements of each generation, and what their perspectives were, and also some stereotypes. So let's talk about the differences, right? Someone recently asked me another question. They asked me if generational differences determine a person's attitude for workplace safety. And I thought about this because this is a very interesting question. And I thought about this for a long time. And I told the person, I don't necessarily believe that generational differences are age. okay, determine a person's attitude towards safety. I think a person's attitude towards safety is built up of two things. Number one is built up of the habits and the culture of the people that they have around them. That's number one. And then also too, I think it's built upon a person's personal and individual experience. For example, if my grandfather, I'll take him for example. My grandfather, in 1996, underwent a very tragic incident, and he was hurt. He was crushed by 5,000 pounds of timber. And during this time, even though he did survive, he had to relearn how to walk again. He had to relearn how to basically live again, struggle with PTSD, lived in a body cast. And, before he had gotten hurt and injured, my grandfather had more of a machoistic personality. I mean, he was more like a superhero. He always felt like he couldn't get hurt. And he felt like, he was a risk taker. Let's just say it that way. He was a high risk taker. And it wasn't until he was injured that his perspective of safety had changed. He became more cautious, more skeptical of high risk situations. He started to ask more questions. He started to remind people about their PPE and different things. And his incident and me watching his incident, that influenced me to have a more cautious and proactive safety mindset. And I think watching him become a victim of the workplace injury, that allowed me to create my own personal perspective of safety. And that drove my mindset and my attitude towards safety. So for me, in the end, it's not about the generational differences or the age. It's about our personal experiences that truly shape how each of us views safety and approaches safety in the workplace. But is it different though? So, and that was a two-part question that I answered. And for the second part, this same student also asked me, if generational differences are ages, do they impact health and safety training? And this is another great question because they do. Over my years, I have learned that they do. After leading, safety training for 10 years, from doing hands-on training, in-person sessions, virtual sessions, small group, large groups, working with corporate teams, working with floor teams, I have trained over 2,000 teams across all different generations, from traditionalists, baby boomers, Generation X, millennials, Gen Z, and I have seen how each group engages with training differently. And they do. For instance, when we're talking about traditionalist baby boomers, they prefer in person, face to face training sessions. They thrive in small groups where they can share stories, they can share the details, they can make connections, they can really generate some value. Engagement, within that training session. They really love to share when they're in these groups. However, when we're talking about traditionalists and baby boomers, they have a strong, well, I don't want to say however, but most times they have a strong understanding of how the company works, and they can offer some great valuable insights into the company, how it's evolved over time. And they also really, really appreciate tangible training materials. So if you are training traditionalists or baby boomers, it is really, really good to have paper handouts, business cards, brochures that they can take back with them to their workplace, share with their team, things that they can actually write down, because remember, they like to write communication down on pen and paper. So things that they can write down and take back with them to their workplace and share it, things that they can hang up on their wall and share it in different things. Those typically work really, really well when we're dealing with our baby boomers and our traditionalists. However, okay, when you're dealing with traditionalists and baby boomers, they may struggle with virtual and remote training. And a lot of times this is because of internet connectivity issues, difficulty logging in, navigating platform features like screen share, emojis, private chat, and even the mute buttons. Even the mute buttons, yeah. So those may be some challenges there. That's why I always say you want to have a hybrid training style. You want to offer both in person and virtual. Okay, and that just makes sure that you're providing training in an efficient and effective way cross generation. So, what about Generation X? Okay. So, when we're talking about Generation X and we're providing health and safety training to them, I always like to tell people to remember that this is the generation that is a highly adaptable. Okay. And they are highly adaptable because they were born in between two different generations. You get they have two different perspectives, two different personalities, two different wants and needs. You have the baby boomers, and then you have the millennials. So they're in between them. So they like a little bit of both, basically, and they're able to handle both on-site training and virtual training, and they're comfortable with technology, but they still value face-to-face interaction when needed. Millennials and Gen Z, on the other hand, they excel in online training. Okay, they engage well with like features, emoji features, private chat. They appreciate flexibility and the convenience of using digital platforms, specifically when you offer self-paced training. You know, they really, really like things like that. They prefer websites and materials that are digital based. So if you have handouts, if you can take those handouts and maybe put them on the website or offer them as a PDF or something like that, where they can be retrieved online, these typically work best with this generation, and I'll explain to you a little bit more why. However, when you're dealing with millennials and Gen Z in terms of health and safety training, traditional face to face training, specifically in large groups, a lot of times they have a hard time engaging. And answering questions and participating. So typically, what I do when I'm working with these with this generation too is I like to have, if we're doing face to face training and it's on site, try to keep the training small. Try to keep the group small as best as you can. I would say between 8 to 10 people, no more, if you have to, no more than 20 people, because that starts to affect the engagement rate. Um, Also, what I noticed too is when it comes to paper handout, a lot of times these things get thrown away. They get left on the desk, they get left on the floor, and it just creates trash, basically, unwanted, unneeded trash. And if you can offer that online, specifically for this group, that can also be a cost savings for your company if you think about it. If you're offering it online for this specific group, that's less you have to print out, less paint, less ink, and that's less work for you. So I would recommend that instructors provide digital options for this group, like barcodes or online resources, which better align with their preferences for keeping things quick, easy, and being able to access easily. So you got to remember that when you're dealing with this generation. So let's talk about addressing some of the generational differences that we're seeing in safety training. Specifically, um, uh, leaders have to stay flexible in their approach. So if you're an instructor or you're a manager or you're a leader at all, and you're dealing with teams cross generationally, you have to stay flexible. You have to offer both online and in-person sessions to cater to the purposes of all of your workers or all the people that you're leading. And it's really, really good to survey teams to see what their preferred method is. Like I was saying, understand what is the best method to communicate with your team. How do they prefer to communicate? Is it by email? Is it by phone? Is it by chat? Is it face to face? How do they prefer to do these? And you got to start surveying these things, because these things are all about connection, all about building, all about understanding. And for face-to-face sessions, specifically when we're talking about millennials and Gen Z, using interactive activities and multimedia can really boost your engagement. So if you're having engagement issues, and I'm pretty sure that every workplace right now is having engagement issues right now in terms of getting people to connect and getting people to talk. And that's kind of why you're taking this, you're listening to this discussion right now. Use interactive activities, offer multimedia during your training sessions and things like that to boost engagement. And another thing that you can do is make sure whatever training content that you're put out, whatever content that you're putting out into your workplace, make sure that you tailor the content to each generation's experience and communication style. And one of the biggest ways that that I've helped companies do this is to get people to talk and to get people to share is by sharing safety fails or safety shares, showing safety acts and things like that, videos or photos of things. Those things really drive communication, and a lot of times they're free. You can get them on your own and you don't have to pay anything for them. And those things drive communication, because if you share that, your boomers is going to say, hey, you know what, they should have did this or they should have did that. And then your millennials say, hey, you know what, oh yeah, they should have did this or they should have did that. And that starts driving communication. That starts driving engagement. And before you know it, people start knowing each other's names and they'll start knowing where each other works and different things. And so that's exactly what we want to do. We want to drive connection. Another thing that you really, really want to make sure that you do is to stay flexible on all the formats. Okay, offer different forms, different ways for people to get trained, different ways for people to communicate. Make sure that there is a way for every person in your company or every person that you're leading to communicate and to connect and to be heard. Another thing that you can do is to promote collaboration. Again, we was talking about the cross mentoring program. That's where you're pairing employees from different generations to help with training and different things, and then also too gathering feedback. This is a big one that I think a lot of people miss when they're putting programs or just putting things into place. Is to continually seek input from the employees or the people that you're leading to make sure that you're refining, you're improving on your training methods, and also that you're keeping things relevant. I can't tell you how many times I have seen a safety training or seen a training in the workplace, period, and things aren't relevant. And many times they're outdated, and that affects the impact and the influence of what you're trying to, the point you're trying to get across. So we got to make sure things are staying relevant to make sure that they're effective. So which takes us to our third core element of this discussion, which is mentorship, which is probably what a lot of you have been waiting for. And as we've seen, different generations bring unique perspectives to the workplace, and this diversity can be a powerful tool for improving safety. You know, and one of the most effective ways to harness this is through, cross generational mentoring. This is again by partnering an older, more experienced team member with a younger team member to bridge communication and to build some trust and collaboration. And when I think about cross mentoring and a cross mentoring program, one of the things that I think about is a story that I once heard, and it's a story of a crocodile and a bird. And typically, when the crocodile opens its jaws, there's a little tiny bird that fearlessly flies into the crocodile's mouth and cleans bits of food from its teeth. And in return, the bird gets protection and a steady meal. And this is what I call a mutual reliance or a mutualistic relationship. And it highlights the collaboration between two different parties where there is an exchange happening and each person is receiving a benefit, and also not only a benefit, but each person is connecting. Now we need each other, we need to coexist together for that common goal, right? And just like the crocodile and the bird, there are different teams, different people um, that can come together and offer unique perspectives and strengths to achieve that common goal. And that reminds us that cooperation leads us to a stronger, more resilient community, right? It leads us to a better workplace of building that mutualistic partnership. So let's talk about this a little bit more. And the real question is how do you generate or how do you create a cross generational program so you can build some mutualistic relationships where people are coexisting and depending on one another and they're willingly able to do it? So how do you start, right? And that is a great question. And typically, what I tell a lot of employers to do, a lot of people that are interested in this, I tell them many times you want to start with a small focus group. All right. You want to start with a small focus group. And many times with this being safety, it will be a great idea to start with your safety committee or your safety team. Most times because they're already committed to the company's common goal of keeping people safe. This helps reinforce dedication while building cross-generational connections. And when you're building that too, you want to start with that safety committee because many times they have the time. Many times they're willing to volunteer. They're already committed and dedicated to the company. You kind of more than likely know their character. You kind of more than likely know their work style and their leadership style. So it would be a great opportunity to start within this team. And then after you figure out what team members that you want to associate within this program, you want to pair them based on their strengths and their needs. You want to pair them based on their strengths and their needs. You want to match workers by balancing their experience and their learning needs. For example, you want to pair a seasoned worker who understands the safety protocols of why you do what you do, the risk of the job, with a younger team member who can bring some fresh ideas to the party, right? Who can bring some fresh ideas to the workplace. This way, both parties benefit from that relationship, and it's not just a one-way street. Both people are gaining something and walking away with something. And the third thing that you want to do, and this is a big one when you're building these programs, you want to set a clear guideline. You want to lay out clear goals for both parties and individuals. What should they focus on? How often should they focus on? You want to establish a roadmap that includes safety discussions, problem solving activities, learning objectives, so that the program is well structured and productive. That is key. You don't want to have this program it's not, there's not any structure, or it just gets let go. You don't want to do that at all. So you want to make sure that the structure has learning objectives, and it also has opportunities to strike up some discussions and some sharing information between both parties. And the number three, make time for connection. And that's why I said start with the safety committee, because you want to ensure that each participant has the dedicated time to participate, to be able to have regular meetings in person, virtual, because they're key to maintaining this relationship, because this requires commitment to have ongoing discussions about safety challenges and solutions. And number four, use hands-on activities. Okay, incorporate practical hands-on learning into this program, whether it is having both individuals doing safety drills, walkthroughs of the facilities, reviewing safety reports or accident data. Getting real-world practice helps both generations connect to this program and be able to connect to each other. And then lastly, you want to establish a feedback loop. Create a way to track how often both parties are connecting with each other, sharing information. Take regular polls and surveys to see what's working, what's not working, and why it's not working, to be able to adjust the program as needed. This keeps the program flexible and ensures that everybody involved is getting actual results. That is key. Everybody involved is getting actual results. And the last one is recognize. You got to recognize and celebrate your successes. Acknowledge every milestone along the way, whether it's improving safety stats or just simply seeing a stronger cross-generational relationship. Recognizing the efforts of both parties, that have played in this. This can really strike up some morale and build some encouragement and participation, for the process. And remember, before we close out about mentorship, cross generational mentorship is not just about sharing knowledge. Cross generational mentorship is not just about sharing knowledge. It is about building relationships that foster trust, safety, and growth. That is it. By pairing both team members together with different experiences, you create the culture where everyone, feels safe, and you can improve unity and safety within the workplace. All right, this brings me to our last core element of today's discussion, which is collaboration. Okay, now that we've discovered cross generational mentorship, let's take a shift into team collaboration and leadership and understand And it's essential to understand how each generation brings different, unique leadership styles to the workplace. And this is really, really huge, especially when you're working with different generations from the workplace in terms of leaders and also those who you are leading. In terms of baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z. So the first one we're going to start with are the baby boomers. Okay, these are individuals who are born from 1946 to 1964, and they are what I call the safety anchored and experienced. Safety anchored in experience. Okay, so let's talk about their characteristics a little bit for a minute. Their characteristics are about they're known for loyalty, structure, and having a hands-on leadership style. These individuals bring a wealth of knowledge and deep understanding of the company's processes, as we've already known, already seen. And in terms of their impact on safety, um, their adherence to established protocol often the positions a lot of times they like to uphold they're really really good at upholding the protocols that we put in place, so traditional safety. A lot of times you can find them mentoring others, and also finding consistency within our safety practices, making sure that we're consistent within our safety practices and our safety teams. In terms of the challenges that you may see when dealing with baby boomers in terms of leadership styles, they believe in traditional leadership styles where there is a hierarchical approach. And this may be difficult because this can limit open communication, specifically when you're dealing with younger Generation Z, who may want to ask questions or who may want to say something to a person from the baby boomer generation. This can kind of limit that communication, and it can make it harder for younger employees to raise concerns about safety. So we really, really have to pay attention to this. The second challenge is slow to change. Okay. The preference for tried and true methods, or typically what I always hear is, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is the way that we've always done it. These type of statements that have always hung around the workplace. Again, being slow to move towards just a different way of doing things or having a different approach. These can be some of the challenges that you may see when you're dealing with this specific generation. So, in terms of practical solutions for some of the areas that you may be challenged with, is number one, encourage knowledge sharing. Okay, this is where we're pairing baby boomers with younger generations because we're doing that cross mentor. That cross generational mentorship program. And that's where we're focusing in on safety, allowing them to pass on their practical knowledge and allowing the younger generation to bring their different perspective and new ideas. So we want to bring that in to be able to make both generations feel heard and it creates a more welcoming space for both generations to talk about what their needs are. Next, in terms of technology specifically, when we're talking about practical solutions for the leadership styles of baby boomers around technology, we have to incorporate new technology slowly. Okay. Incorporate new technology slowly, introduce new safety technology gradually. And the first thing that we have to do, we have to demonstrate its relevance, its benefits, and we have to allow our boomers to be able to voice their opinion about the technology, because it may be something that we're not seeing. Because a lot of times, as I tell you all the time, they understand the job, they understand why the company does what it does. So if they have that understanding, and we're bringing in new technology, we want that expertise. We want that expertise because they're looking at something that we may not be seeing. So we definitely want to do it. So we want to release new technology out maybe in phases or during quarters, so that we can let it out gradually and then we can get more buy-in as things move forward. So, which brings me next to our next generation, which is Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980. This is what I call the independent yet safety focused generation. Okay. In terms of leadership characteristics, we're looking at they are pragmatic and resourceful. They value work-life balance, and they favor flexibility and clear communication. In terms of their impact on safety, they are extremely adaptable leaders. As I tell you all the time, they have to balance that. They adaptable leaders who balance safety and efficiency. They believe in promoting a culture where value is being made, and also too a culture where people are feeling heard. In terms of the challenges for this specific generation of leaders, one of the big things that you got to pay attention to is navigating conflicting styles. And I say this all the time is because Generation X leaders have been positioned between two different generations and two different perspectives on technology, two different perspectives on management, and Generation X leaders may struggle to satisfy both traditional ways of leading for safety and also innovative practice for safety, bringing in new technology. And this can also impact consistency with this type of leader. And one of the things that, in terms of the practical solutions that you can have in place for this when you're dealing with a generation a Generation X individual in terms of a leader, one of the things that they really, really value and what works really, really well with them is straightforward communication. Encourage direct and open communication about safety needs across all safety teams and create a standard that aligns with Generations X approach. So we got to make sure that there's a direct level of communication, open communication across all safety teams, and they know what's going on. Okay, and this is really big with this generation. So next we have millennials. Okay, millennials is what I like to call the innovative driven safety leader. Okay, millennials leadership styles are more collaborative, tech savvy, and purpose driven. They prioritize teamwork and proactive solutions. Their impact on safety is they like to use technology and data to enhance safety, like in safety tracking, data analysis. Their focus is on inclusivity and to build a strong workplace culture. But when you're dealing with millennial leaders, some of the challenges that you may see is that their drive for innovation can lead to frustration with slower processes. So if things are happening slower, it can cause some frustration and potentially clash with established safety protocol. And that is a big one. All right. And then number two, limited practical experience. With more office based roles, some millennials may lack hands on experience when they're dealing with high risk or hazardous work environments that can impact their understanding of high risk settings. Okay. So that is a big one to pay attention to when you're dealing with millennial leaders. Okay. And then another practical solution, okay, when you're dealing with millennial leaders is to integrate digital safety tools. Use apps and digital platforms to track the safety metrics, which align with millennials' tech savvy approach and also can improve analysis for safety overall within the workplace, right? Because if we're putting programs into place and we're putting things into place, we want some data that's telling us what direction we're going. If it's getting closer towards our goal or it's not getting to our goal at all. Is it worth our time? Is it worth our effort? Is it worth our money? Or is it not at all? So we want something that's going to generate data for us so that we can use it as a benchmark or a KPI to determine what are the next steps, right? So, one last practical solution for the challenges of dealing with a millennial leader is encourage collaborative safety planning. Okay. Allow millennial leaders to lead and participate in safety committees, promote purpose driven work, and team oriented safety incentives to increase some of the accountability and responsibility of the millennial leader. So, this brings me to our last generation, and this is Generation Z, born between 1997 and early 2010s. And this is what I call the digitally enabled safety advocates. Their characteristic styles are that they're quick to adopt to new technologies. They have they prefer direct communication, and they value transparency. Their impact on safety is that Gen Z leaders are highly receptive to digital solutions for safety management and training. This is a big thing to know, okay? Specifically, if you're interested in bringing in new technology or something about safety and you have a Gen Z leader, this is a great way to get buy in. Take it to that person. This is typically what I do. I try to find all those individuals in the workplace who are Gen Z leaders or have influence and win them over because they are the individuals who are really, really big on trying new digital solutions and trying to bring them into the workplace. So I'm trying to win them over if I'm interested in bringing a new safety virtual reality system into the workplace or something like that. So some of the challenges that you can face when you're dealing with a Gen Z leader is limited experience. As the youngest workforce, many Gen Z employees may be less familiar with industry hazards and potentially leading to high risk behavior without proper guidance. So one of the big things that we have to make sure here is when we're working with Gen Z, we have to make sure that we're providing them adequate training before we let them into the workplace, specifically when we're dealing with high risk work or any type of known hazards that can potentially hurt someone, making sure that we give them the proper guidance and the proper safety training before we allow them into the workplace and to do the job to make sure that they make it home safe. All right. So the next challenge that we have for our Gen Z leader is that digital communication preference. So Gen Z, as we know, they rely on digital communication, and this can sometimes limit face-to-face interaction, which is essential for some safety instructors and some hands-on learning. Say, for instance, your fall protection training, your PPE training, and different things like that. A lot of those, or your confined space training, a lot of those trainings have to be done hands-on in the workplace so you can see what's going on. But a lot of times, Gen Z, they rely on digital, right? So it'd be good if you have a hybrid training model where you're offering both hands-on and online and providing hands online resources too. So this is really, really good. So you got to stay hybrid and stay flexible. Oh, again, I think I moved a little too fast there. So when we're talking about the practical solutions for the challenges of Gen Z, just making sure that we're providing in-person, hands-on training for both Gen Z, so they can receive training online and hands-on, just to make sure that we're feeding those needs. And another practical solution too is to clarify reporting channels. Okay, we have to simplify and clarify our formal safety reporting processes for our Gen Z team members. And a lot of times, because they're the newer team members, they may not necessarily know who everybody is in the workplace, know their names or their positions or what their role is or how they fit and play into the workplace. So when it comes in times of safety reporting, whether they find a hazard or whether they get injured or something like that, they may not necessarily know exactly who to go to. So a lot of times we have to go back to our safety processes and make sure that we're spilling everything out clearly and specifically and put it in a simple way to where people know exactly who to go to, exactly what to do when you see a hazard, exactly what to do when someone gets hurt. And so we're not leaving any gaps in those systems. All right. That is it. So before we leave today, I want to go over some key takeaways. So, first takeaway: generational strengths enhance safety. They do. Each generation, I want you to remember that each generation brings unique strengths to the table, leveraging they can create a stronger workplace and a stronger culture for everybody. We remember we have to adapt our communication styles. We have to tailor our communication methods to fit the generational preferences to encourage better collaboration and understanding among all of our team members. The third thing is cross generational mentorship is key to pairing. Is key is key to success. We have to pair different generations to promote knowledge based sharing and also to build some real relationships so we can make sure that we're actually being able to transition different information from one generation to the next. That's what we have to do. And next, we have to blend traditional safety with new tech safety approaches. We have to offer both hands on methods and digital methods to meet the diverse needs of all of our generations that are in the workplace, because we have five. We have five with different perspectives, different characteristics, different personalities, different wants and needs. So we have to make sure that we're fulfilling and we're listening to the people that we're leading and listening to our coworkers who are leading beside us as well. So that is it. That is all I have for you all today. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. I really appreciate your openness to exploring how different generations can strengthen our approach to workplace safety as we work to keep more people safe in the workplace. If you're looking for more information or you have a question, you can always find me on LinkedIn or you can check out my website. And if you're looking for more information about managing different generations in the workplace to create a safer workplace, you can check out my new book, The Power of Teamwork, on Amazon. Thank you so much. And I truly appreciate your time today. I pray you all have a wonderful, safe day. Thank you.